Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's tutorial is going to be focused around Discord server banners. Now this tutorial, just like the past server banner I did, is very open to many other characters or genres. All you need to do is just swap the character image with one for whichever game, movie, etc. that you're trying to make the banner for. And the same goes for the logo in the backgrounds. All you need to do is just swap it out and apply the proper effects and you're good to go. I'm just focusing on the anime characters for most stuff because that's what the whole Suke theme is about, but it's really interchangeable for a lot of these banners. So without further ado, let's jump right into the tutorial. So we're going to start out by going to File, New. We're going to do 960 by 540. Then click Create. You're going to delete this background layer because we won't be using it. Go to your paint bucket tool. Make sure you have this color selected, 31, 31, 31. I'm going to drop that down. We're going to do Control G. We'll call this the base. And let's make this red. Then once again, base. We're going to apply a inner shadow to this one. So go to inner shadow and you want 100, 0, 23, and 21 for that inner shadow. And I can always go back and change it if you want it to be more prominent, but this should suit your needs for now. So hit OK. And then I'm going to start grabbing a few textures that we're going to need for this background area. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to grab a chalkboard and this one. Let me close out of that one, and this one. So the first one I'm going to apply is going to be this rough one. I'm going to do a clipping mask, do Control T, and get it to fit the frame. A little bit larger. Now normally upscaling isn't good, but because you're going to be dropping the opacity and such on this, and people aren't really going to see it, and the resizing is on such a small scale that it doesn't really matter. So we're going to go to Vivid Light for this. And for the opacity, we're going to go to 10%. Oops. 10%. Perfect. And now we're going to go over to our chalkboard. Drop it as well and make sure, you don't have to clip it. I just clip everything if it's going to a layer just to keep things organized. Otherwise, it looks like a giant mess. So for the chalkboard, you want to go on to Soft Light and you want to make the opacity 60%. And for the last one, you want to bring it down, Control T. Once again, it's a little small, but that's not a problem. We can resize it a tad, hit check mark. This one, we're going to go on to Overlay and the opacity 60%. Great. So let's name this the texture scrapes, texture chalkboard, and then texture rough. And now we're going to go ahead and grab these hexagons. We're going to drag them over. And we're not going to clip them just yet because we need to get them into the pattern that's going to be usable for us. So do Control T and resize them all the way down till about even smaller. Probably here. Now you don't want them too small, otherwise you're not going to be able to see them. And even this is hard to see, but we have a little trick. What we can do is go into blending options, go to stroke, we don't want red. Going to add a regular black stroke to it. And 1 pixel should really be sufficient for this. So just rasterize that. And then we can just start Control J, duplicating this until we have the pattern that we want. So do Control J, make sure it lines up. It does. And I'm going to pause real quick while I do this because there's no reason to really show this part, because all we need to do is Control J, duplicate it over, and make sure it lines up. Okay, and now that we have everything perfectly lined out, we can just right click and hit Merge Group. Now looking at it in its full pattern size, it does still look a tad large to me. So I'm going to do Control T and scale it down just a little bit more till about here. Now this right side, as you can see, is a bit short now, but we can just do Control J, drag it over, and it's completely fine that it goes out of the frame because nobody's going to see it. Great. So we can just merge this down. We can name this the hexagons. And we're going to do a soft light for this one at 45% opacity. And this is going to go right there. Alright, and then for the last step over the backgrounds, we're going to drag the logo that we want to use over. Now again, you don't want to scale things up because that drops the quality of it. So for this, let's go maybe 18%, maybe 22. Great. And let's name this logo. And with that, that wraps up the base layer. Now we're just moving on to the characters, and that's it for the banner. Now for the character frames, what we're going to be doing is using this bright blue color. It doesn't really matter which color you choose. I like to choose bright colors if I want to overlay something on top of an object. The reason being, if something doesn't line up properly, I'll see that bright red, pink, blue, green, etc. And I'll know that I need to push it back. So I'm just going to use blue. You can really use whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Wow, I'm using red now. Let's drag that out. Now before I was using about 165 pixels for the width, but I think I might try 170 for this because even that felt a little short. Rotate it once, make sure you hold shift while you do so to get that perfect 15-degree angle, and then drop it right there. And then make sure you group that. We'll name this base, Control J, Control J, Control J. There we go. You don't want the distance between them to be too large. There we go. And you can also use the the arrow keys on your keyboard to move things by 1 pixel. That's good. And then the last one, we just drag right over as well. Great. And then for these, let's just put them right about here so it's centered. And I'm checking the left corner and the right corner to make sure they are centered. And I'll use my arrow keys to fine tune it. Just Control G that, Control G, Control G, Control G. And then this 1, 2, 3, 4, and that just being in the order of how these go from left to right. Base, and then base. I'm going to pause real quick just so I can grab my characters and drop them in, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've grabbed my characters, and I've already put them in the folders, but I haven't yet resized them. So I'm going to hide these real quick. I'm going to hold Alt and click right at the border between these two to clip it. Alternatively, you could just right click and do create clipping mask. Right now it says release because it's already clipped. So Control T, go to width and flip that because I would like all the characters facing sort of to the left for this one. Let's see, let's resize him a little bit, and that should be about okay, maybe a bit smaller. Great. That's the first character. Now we'll go on to the second one. Control T, flip the width. Make sure it is clipped. Just drag him over. Great. Go on to the next one. He's already facing the right direction. So Control T. Resize a little bit. The focus is on the face, so I don't want too much of the body in this scenario. And same thing here. I believe he's facing the right direction. Yes, he is. So clip that one as well. Control T. And maybe a little bit smaller. Great. And all the faces are essentially lined up as well, which is perfect. And then let's hide this for a second. Let's actually make this blue as well. We'll call this the characters. And for this, let's go and add a drop shadow. Drop shadow, and for this we want 81703. That's already perfect. And then we're going to come back to our characters, create a new layer, switch to white, and then we're going to go over to the ellipse tool, and we're going to drop an ellipse that looks sort of like so. And then make sure you hold shift while you rotate it to make sure it's properly aligns. And this was actually a perfect first time, I think. Yep, I kind of want it to curve off the edges, and it's doing that in a visible fashion. If I had it any longer, the curve wouldn't be as noticeable. So that's great. And what you're going to want to do with this layer is, let's name this mirror. You're going to want to go to soft lights, and let's give it, say, 90% opacity. And just clip that on over the top. Now you can adjust the opacity if you like to make it more or less clear that there's something over there, but this is about the size you see of the banner, and you can pretty clearly see that there is something going on that left side. We can always bump the opacity or try out other blending modes if you would like. So let's Control J that, move it to 2, Control J, move it to 3, Control J, and move it to 4. Let's clip that, name this mirror, and move it over. Great. Clip that, move it over, and make sure it's all named the same. Oh, I forgot to name that layer. There we go. And let's clip that and name this mirror as well, and drag it over. And that's basically. Now this design was rather simple to make and quick. This is probably the quickest tutorial we've had on the channel, but overall I think it looks really, and you can apply it to a lot of different genres. If you want, you can maybe add text on the left and the right sides, or further expands the size of these character slots, and maybe a few more effects in the backgrounds. But keep in mind, Discord's going to cut off a little bit, and you're not going to see all the small, minute details that you might want to have in there. But it's up to you if you want to adjust a few things or add a few other things. But that marks the end for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll have another video popping up on screen to another tutorial that's also pretty unique and fun to make. See ya.